Welcome back to Module 3 of Project Communications on Virtual and Global Teams. I'm Cornelius Fichtner, and with me is Mike Grobner from Grobner Cumming and Associates. In Module 1, we looked at the introduction and talked about the communication theory. In Module 2, we talked a lot about virtualization and globalization barriers. And now in Module 3, we are going to top it off with looking at technology barriers, social media impact, and also some communication improvement strategies. To lead you into this one here, Mike, let me ask you what you mean by technology barriers. Do you mean technology we use today breaking down, or technology being a barrier for communication?
Well, I like to say that, the email and that has made bad communication
worse,
quicker. It's you can miscommunicate hundreds of times during a day instead of 10 or 15. So we have to sort of realize and go back to that 7% visual and say, okay, the worst thing is actually text messaging, is because it's short, has to be high context by the nature of things, and it lacks all of the tones and visual clues. Email's a little bit longer, but the first thing you do is you get people that write novels instead of,
My wife.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
I would never say that, though.
I'm allowed to.
Conference calls, now you've got the voice coming into it, you've got inflections. That's getting better. It's probably better and more effective than email. But if you have a lot of people that you're trying to communicate with, and they're coughing, typing, not putting people on mute and stuff like that, it can quickly become a royal mess. And then you got WebEx, which a lot of people are using now, and where they have the screen, their screen displayed.
Right, so we're talking about video conferencing tools, WebEx, GoToMeeting,
right.
Skype offers similar tools, yes.
I haven't seen a lot of video stuff. I saw that at one time, and it's sort of, at least from my experience, sort of fallen out of fad. There's not enough value in the video conferencing. But WebEx people like, where there's either a PowerPoint or you're looking at a Word document, and it just tends to keep everybody focused.
Okay, so you're talking about WebEx webinar type presentations versus WebEx meeting type presentations, where you actually see the other people.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
But if it works for you, I certainly encourage you to do it.
Well then, we started out this presentation, or Module 3 of this presentation, with technology barriers, and now we're suddenly looking at Agile versus Waterfall. How is that a technology barrier?
Well, because it's a process, and it's becoming more and more common to talk about Agile versus Waterfall. I'm an old Waterfall guy. I've been doing Waterfall since the 1980s in aerospace, and I believe in it. And I went to get my Agile certification, and I figured, well, if I could just keep my mouth shut for 2 days, I'd go through it, and I get the certification, and that would be done with it. What I found, it was one of the most life-changing, most amazing classes that I have taken, because it really talked about, and what I saw was I could be agile within Waterfall. So, and both of them have a different style of communication. Agile relies on short bursts of frequent communication, daily stand-up meetings, less formal, all of that stuff. The product demo is you demo what you did. You don't talk about it. You don't create these long PowerPoint presentation. You don't practice them. You just go do it. So Agile is very much in the moment, in communicating short bursts of high intensity information. Waterfall relies on documentation, so the requirements are 450 pages. And, of course, the guy who signs off on the requirements read and understood every one of those 450 pages. They require on the process to make sure that everybody's on the same page, where oftentimes when you have a document that big, people are busy. They just, is it right? Okay, I'll sign it off. We'll move on. The one thing that I see with Waterfall is everybody likes to assign blame. So Waterfall, because of the documents and the approved, the development folks say, well, it's your fault because you approved the requirements. And then the people that the business says, well, we approved the requirements and it's your fault because you didn't ask clarifying questions.
Yeah, that's generally known as the 10th knowledge area of the PMBOK guide, project blame management.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And so I strongly encourage every PMP to go get Agile certified. I'm much more of a Scrum fan, but PMI's Agile, and you can bring those processes back. You can run sprints within the waterfall. A lot of the one thing that was really magical to me is I started doing retrospectives, and even in a waterfall environment, the team started thinking about what they were doing and why they were having problems, and so they self-modified instead of me telling them we got to change.
Right.
It was longer and harder to get them to do it than just command them, but the end results was much more effective. It was a long-term. It was a cultural change instead of do this or Mike's going to yell at you.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a challenging question then. Are you saying that with Agile you have seen improved communications on your team?
I have. I don't necessarily believe any process should be a religion. And
right.
So my approach is I want as many tools in my toolbox that I can get. And I want to pull them out when they help and when they're appropriate. And I want to leave them in when they're not appropriate. So, but I think if you walk into a project and you don't have this other dimension, you really are missing out on a tremendous opportunity. There's a lot of good work that's done in Agile. I don't think we as project managers should be dedicated to one another because there's a lot of different projects. If you're a project manager that only does billion-dollar a year projects and you're building aircraft carriers, I don't think Agile will work at the design of the aircraft carrier. But it may work in some of the installations and stuff like that where there's a iterative design type approach.
Well, and with that, we have come to the end of Module 3. Well, sort of. There are still many slides ahead of us, but now we're getting into the let's apply what we have learned phase. So just like at the end of Module 2, we didn't throw in a take action slide. We won't be doing that here at the end of Module 3 either. Instead, we're now going into the this is what we have learned, this is how we apply it, this is how we are going to overcome all of these barriers, all of these negative areas in communications that we may run into. So, Mike, tools for managers, tools for project managers to overcome communication barriers. What have you got for us?
I think the first one is the KISS principle. Keep it simple. More words, it does not increase communication. It typically decreases communications. Next one, use repetition as a theme. If you're going to communicate a vision, if you keep that vision going and keeping people with holding that vision in their mind, you're going to be able to keep people on task and keep people focused. Third one, hard thing to do, but avoid gender-specific metaphors. There's just too many people that will get offended. It's just one thing you need to get rid of. Employ the most effective technology available. don't get sucked in by new and great. You got to ask yourself, how is this going to help me? Is it, one of my big frustrations in SharePoint is SharePoint is a wonderful tool that makes a 5-minute job into a 20-minute job. It's checking in, checking out, whereas I miss the shared drive on the local network. I'm done with the file. I check it in. Yeah, somebody overwrites it, but we call up IT. They restore it. Make sure that the technology works for the entire project team, including the remote project team. The next one is seek outside training. There's a lot of good things out there that aren't expensive, that somebody's taken the time to research. Repurpose it. 90% is good enough. I really believe in that. There's a lot of community college and stuff like that to help you. Next thing, one of the things that is one of my pet peeves is be specific about timelines and due dates for deliverables. When it's due on the 3rd, is that the morning of the 3rd? Is it close of business? Does close of business mean midnight or 8 a.m. the next day? All of those things. And the other thing is don't forget to include the definition of done. What is done? Oh yeah, just because you coded it and it doesn't compile, is it done? You didn't test it. All of these things are communication barriers. And the last thing is establish ground rules for your team to collaborate. Write them down. Get them distributed. How do you hold a meeting? What's acceptable and not? What time does the meeting start? What time does a 12 o'clock meeting start? Well, if you've got a meeting that ends at 12 o'clock and the next one starts at 12 o'clock, there's no time for a bio break or anything. You got to take that into account. You're communicating that the people aren't important because you're trying to manage a schedule. So, okay, we're going to stop it at the end of the hour, but we're going to take 3 to 5 minutes to start the meeting. And there's things you can do as the start of the meeting that doesn't require everybody to be there.
And now we're moving into the currently ubiquitous social media impacts. Mike, what do you think about social media on projects?
Well, I'd like all change to stop from here on forward. But unfortunately, nobody called me up and said, Mike, can we move forward with the social media concept? I actually think it could hold promise, more so in keeping context of the project. What's going on? Are things moving? Are things stalled? That type of stuff. I have seen some early adopters, but in general, when I've tried to adopt anything like that, what has happened is I've run into roadblocks with management saying, well, we're concerned about security and confidentiality and stuff like that. So I haven't really seen social media tools that work in the workplace. I think the things like LinkedIn are tremendously valuable.
For connecting to other project managers, for furthering your career, right?
Well, even for education,
Right.
I visit a lot of the links that somebody will post, so it allows me to improve my ability to collect information and evolve my approaches and
Right,
stuff
but
like that.
on a project itself, very difficult to apply and employ social media itself.
Most of the time, Facebook is blocked in
Right.
in the organizations that I deal with. So no matter what you use, it really doesn't apply. Although I see instant messaging being used more and more.
Yeah, I think that's also why we have just one slide about social media here in your presentation here, because there really is no silver bullet that anybody at this time of the recording of this webinar here has to offer to us project managers. This is the tool that you as a PM can use on your projects when it comes to social media.
Yeah. And It's not a silver bullet. Be aware that what communication tools you use, what needs are filled, and what needs are not fulfilled. What's working, what's not working. Again, it's a lot of work. It's 80% of the project is communication, and the other 80% is communication.
And since 160% on our projects is all about communicating, what are some communication improvement strategies that you have for our participants?
This is what I use, and it's really before I communicate, I consciously sit and say, okay, I need to ask myself some questions. How do I want this received? Do I want it received as not very happy or overjoyed or whatever? What actions would I like to invoke? Okay, I start with the action. I start with the end, and then I work backwards with formulating the communication. What miscommunication paths are possible? I review my communications, and I generally change a couple of sentences because it's like, oh, somebody could misconstrue this or miscommunicate that. And then the other thing is, okay, now what do I want as positive feedback that the message was understood? So when I ask for a editorial content plan and I get another plan that adds 6 months to the schedule, it's like, oh, well, that went poorly because I really wanted the execution plan, not the planning plan. I did want to extend the planning phase by another 6 months. So a lot of times, 1 or 2 times of email, and then time to get up and make a face-to-face meeting.
Right. Is this something you do consciously? Is this something you do unconsciously? It's just so ingrained in you don't even think about it?
This has to be conscious. This has to be because I think if you try to ingrain to unconsciousness, you're going to fool yourself. Because if you're not thinking about this, you're not going to make these steps. So take this as a baseline, modify it as well as what fits your need, but almost post this on your wall and say, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to make sure these steps are followed religiously.
Mike, let's do a quick review and ensure that we have helped everybody understand how to improve their communications on their virtual and global teams. So let's do a learning goals review here. So tell us, how did we define and explain how communications impacts projects?
Well, I got a sneaking suspicion that if you're listening to this, you already know how communication impacts projects. But more importantly, we looked at the models, the theories, and stuff like that to get a baseline to do the analysis on not that we're having problems, but why we're having problems.
Right. How did we achieve the understanding of the communications process?
We talked about the sender-receive model, and we talked about specific techniques on how you can verify that your message was understood.
And how did we let our participants allow them to devise and confidently control communication during their projects?
Well, hopefully we've provided you with a number of examples and a number of ideas where you can start bringing them all together and define your communication style, your communication approach, and your communication plan.
Okay, and did we provide them tools to identify and analyze communications problems, evaluate other people's commitment to communication, and adapt to working in teams and leading the communication process?
Well, you should be able to take one of these models, especially the sender-receive model, and say, okay, what happened? So you can take problems and you can work backwards and say, okay, where did we miscommunicate? You can evaluate other people's commitment to communications. The guy that says that stays in the corner, doesn't say anything, and goes in the lunchroom and badmouths the project. There's obviously a communication problem there. Okay. and adapt to working in teams and leading communications. We talked a lot about culture and some of the less obvious factors that impede communication amongst team members. So those are some of the things that we've done and should help you.
We usually close our webinars with a look at what else the presenter has to offer. Last time you were here as Mike Grobner, private citizen. In the meantime, you and Tom Cumming got together and you founded Grobner, Cumming and Associates. So what do you offer?
You know, we were frustrated as we teach, we lecture, because we want people to grow. And what we found is that there's this great fear on all the rules have changed on managing your career, and people aren't aware of what the new rules are. So what we developed, we said, look, you know, what used to be available in the company was mentoring, coaching, and skill development. That's all gone away from an employer perspective. So we wanted to give that back. We wanted to take advantage of our Rolodex. And we wanted to create a model that we could be with you from 18 to 80. We could be saying, okay, how do you want to get there? A big thing we believe in is branding yourself, marketing yourself, and also networking. So those are the things that we want to do. We don't want to become another training organization. What we want to do is become a career management organization that helps you through the process.
And where can people find more information about your new company?
Well, we have a website, grubnercumming.com. We're also on LinkedIn as a company. Search for us. And you can always email me at mike.grubner@grubnercumming.com.
Wonderful. Mike, thank you very much for coming back and talking to us about global communication on virtual and global teams. I appreciate it very much.
Very much a pleasure.